When you talk about players redefining the landscape of a sport, Caitlin Clark's name now sits at the very top of the list for the WNBA. Her impact isn't theoretical, it's measurable, and not just in points, assists, or efficiency ratings. We're talking real-world results. Packed arenas from coast to coast, a nationwide spike in TV viewership, and a level of mainstream media coverage that women's basketball has been chasing for decades. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. And yet, instead of unanimous celebration inside the league, Clark's meteoric rise has been met with something uglier: pockets of resentment, tension in locker rooms, and outright hostility from some veteran players who see her as a threat to the hierarchy. This is where Sophie Cunningham steps in. The veteran guard, known for her candor and on-court toughness, has made it clear she's not going to sit quietly while the league's biggest asset gets torn down from the inside. Clark's numbers don't lie. Let's start with the hard facts. The WNBA has been fighting for years to break through into mainstream sports consciousness. Attendance numbers were stagnant, TV ratings were inconsistent, and national sponsorship interest was lukewarm. Then Clark arrived, and the entire atmosphere shifted. Games featuring the Fever now regularly draw over 2 million viewers. That's not just good for women's basketball. That's beating NHL playoff games, primetime Major League Baseball broadcasts, and even some NBA matchups. In an era where attention is the most valuable currency, Caitlin Clark is a WNBA's blue-chip stock. Her effect on road games is even more dramatic. Opponents are moving games to larger NBA arenas just to handle the demand. Teams that once played in 7,000-seat venues are suddenly selling 15,000 seats in an instant. And it's not because of their own rosters. It's because Clark is in town. The resistance from within. You would think every player in the league would recognize the value in this and embrace it. But the reality is much messier. According to Sophie, some veteran players aren't just indifferent to Clark's rise. They're actively trying to humble her, targeting her with physical play and verbal jabs. The reasoning? Control. The WNBA has long been dominated by a small core of established stars who dictate the public conversation. Clark's arrival has shifted the spotlight dramatically, and not everyone likes sharing it. They'll say it's about making her tougher, Sophie explained in a post-game interview. But it's not. It's about tearing her down. They don't want to admit she's already changed the league in ways they never could. A double standard on full display. Sophie went further, pointing out the hypocrisy in how male sports stars are treated. When LeBron came into the NBA, when Tom Brady took over the NFL, when Tiger Woods exploded onto the golf scene, nobody tried to dim their light. Everyone understood, this is the guy, and we need to ride this wave. But here, some people act like it's a bad thing to have someone who can fill arenas by herself. And she's not wrong. In most men's leagues, a player who single-handedly drives massive ratings is treated like a crown jewel. They're protected by the league, embraced by their peers, and featured in every possible marketing campaign. But with Clark, there's a strange tension, as if her popularity is somehow undeserved or in need of being earned through punishment on the court. The jealousy factor. Of course, some critics point to race as a factor, claiming that Clark's popularity is tied to her being white in a predominantly black league. Sophie didn't shy away from addressing that, either. She's not popular because of the color of her skin, Sophie said flatly. She's popular because she's an extraordinary talent. She's the best passer I've ever played with. She's at Steph Curry range. She competes every possession. People like watching greatness, and she's great. By saying this publicly, Sophie essentially called out one of the league's most uncomfortable undercurrents, that some of the resistance to Clark is more about optics and perception than about actual basketball. Why the league can't afford to lose her. From a business standpoint, Sophie's defense of Clark is just common sense. Without her, the Fever go back to being a rebuilding team in a small market. Without her, those TV numbers take a sharp dive. Road crowds shrink back to normal size, and the casual sports fans who tuned in for the first time might not come back. Sponsorships? Same story. Big brands like Nike, Gatorade, and State Farm are lining up to feature Clark in national ads because they know she moves a needle. Remove her from the equation, and the WNBA instantly becomes a much harder sell to advertisers. And that's where Sophie's comments really sting for the league, because she's not just offending a teammate. She's warning the WNBA's decision-makers that they're playing with fire. Clark is the league's turning point. This isn't just about one player's career trajectory. Clark represents a rare moment of opportunity for the WNBA, the kind of moment that, if handled correctly, can lead to a permanent leap in cultural relevance. But history is full of leagues that squander these moments. Boxing in the post-Tyson era. Women's soccer in the years after the 1999 World Cup. Even the NBA had its dark days between Jordan's first retirement and the arrival of Shaq, Kobe, and later LeBron. Momentum can vanish quickly if it's not nurtured. For Sophie, protecting Clark isn't just about winning games. It's about making sure the WNBA doesn't blow its best shot at becoming a mainstream fixture. The locker room divide. One of the more worrying aspects of this situation is how it could fracture team chemistry. When a player becomes as big as Clark, it changes internal dynamics, especially if others feel she's getting more media attention than they are. Sophie has stepped in as both a vocal leader and a shield, willing to take the heat publicly so Clark doesn't have to fight every battle herself. That kind of loyalty is rare, but it's also risky. It can put a target on Sophie's back from players and fans who see her as Clark's enforcer. Still, she's not backing down. If standing up for my teammate makes me unpopular with some people, I can live with that, she said. What I can't live with is watching the league sabotage itself. The path forward. The obvious solution is for the WNBA to fully embrace Clark's role as its primary marketing driver, while also making sure she's protected on the court. That means officiating has to be consistent. That means there needs to be accountability when she's the target of unnecessary contact. And that means the league has to send a clear message that its stars are an asset, not a threat. But there's also work to be done inside locker rooms. Coaches and veteran leaders need to set the tone, reminding players that Clark's success doesn't diminish theirs. Rising tide, all boats, etc. What's at stake? If the WNBA fumbles this, the damage won't just be financial. It will send a message to future stars, college players right now who might be watching, that the league doesn't know how to handle rapid success. That is a place where your biggest obstacle might not be your opponent, but the resentment of your peers. On the flip side, if the league gets it right, Clark's era could be remembered as a point where women's basketball finally broke into the mainstream in a sustained way, where rivalries became national talking points, where ticket demand exceeded supply in every city, and where little girls grew up seeing packed arenas as a norm. And that's why Sophie's words carry so much weight, because she's not just talking about one player. She's talking about the future of the entire sport. And she's making it clear. You either embrace Caitlin Clark now, or you risk losing everything she's brought with her. Sophie Cunningham's defense of Caitlin Clark wasn't a slip of the tongue. It was a deliberate, calculated statement aimed directly at the WNBA's leadership, the veteran players who have been quietly and not so quietly working to check Clark, and the fans who have been watching this drama unfold in disbelief. The message? The league is playing a dangerous game by failing to protect, celebrate, and maximize its most marketable player, and it might not realize just how fragile this golden moment really is. Clark's appeal is more than numbers. While attendance figures, television ratings, and merchandise sales are the proof that Clark moves the needle, Sophie and others know her impact is deeper than spreadsheets. She's bringing in fans who have never watched a WNBA game in their lives. She's turning casual sports fans into invested followers. She's creating viral moments that reach beyond basketball Twitter and into mainstream cultural conversation. This isn't something you can just replicate by pushing another player to the forefront. Clark's mix of charisma, skill, and relatability is rare. It's working in real time. Yet, for reasons that seem more about ego than logic, some corners of the league are resisting it. The same league that has long complained about a lack of visibility now seems hesitant to fully ride the wave Clark has created. The on-court reality, part of Sophie's frustration and Clark's, is the level of physical punishment she's taking on the court. There's hard basketball play, and then there's a kind of constant elbows, blindside hits, and overly aggressive screens that have no place in any league claiming protected stars. If a player like LeBron James, Steph Curry, or even John Morant were absorbing 17% of all flagrant fouls in their league, it would be headline news and a front office priority to protect them. In the WNBA, Clark has been told, implicitly and explicitly, to toughen up. The issue isn't toughness. It's the risk of injury. The more Clark is targeted without repercussions, the higher the odds that one of those hits sidelines her for months. And without Clark in the lineup, the Fever's competitiveness drops. But more importantly, the league's momentum screeches to a halt. Locker room politics and the star treatment myth. Inside the Fever's locker room, things appear united on the surface, with teammates like Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull showing public support. But across the league, whispers about star treatment and media bias circulate. Here's the irony. The so-called star treatment Clark is accused of getting is almost entirely off the court. She's not getting calls in games. She's not being protected by refs. She's not being given nights off to rest. In fact, she's playing more minutes than most rookies in recent memory, often being asked to carry her team's offensive load against offenses designed solely to stop her. Sophie has made it clear jealousy won't grow the league. We all benefit from the attention Caitlin brings. If you can't see that, you're not thinking about the bigger picture, she said after one particularly physical game where Clark took multiple uncalled hits. Veteran pushback and generational shift. The WNBA has never had a player arrive with this level of ready-made fame. Even generational greats like Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Candace Parker had to build their followings over years. Clark came in as a fully formed household name, with college highlight reels and record-breaking achievements already fresh in the public's mind. For some veterans, that's hard to swallow. They see her skipping the years of grinding for recognition that they endured, and instead of embracing her as a catalyst they never had, some are trying to make her earn it the hard way. But the sports world has changed. Social media, streaming, and viral moments have accelerated fame in ways that didn't exist in 2004. What took years to build for one generation can happen overnight for next. Fighting that reality doesn't preserve tradition. It just stunts the league's growth. The double standard in coverage. Sophie also pointed to the double standard in how Clark's popularity is framed. In men's sports, being the face of the league is celebrated. In women's sports, it becomes a political debate. When LeBron was crowned the chosen one before his first NBA game, it didn't trigger resentment from every veteran player. It became a rallying point for the league's marketing. When Patrick Mahomes became the NFL centerpiece, nobody claimed it was unfair to other quarterbacks. But when Caitlin Clark gets national ad campaigns and feature stories, suddenly it's seen as taking opportunities away from others. That mindset is poison, Sophie said. You can't grow a league if you resent the person bringing in the most eyes. You work with them, not against them. Sponsorship and revenue implications. The dollars don't lie. Clark's arrival has been a windfall for the WNBA. Jersey sales spiked. Team valuations climbed. Sponsorship deals expanded. And this isn't just benefiting Indiana. It's lifting the entire league. Yet the league's apparent reluctance to prioritize her safety and marketability raises real business risks. If Clark were to get injured due to the unchecked targeting she faces, sponsors who sign on because of her might pull back. TV ratings could nosedive. The momentum that took years to build could vanish in weeks. For a league still operating with relatively thin profit margins, that kind of blow could set them back years. The Sophie factor. Sophie Cunningham's defense of Clark isn't purely altruistic. She knows that a league with a booming fan base benefits everyone, including herself. The bigger the stage, the more opportunities there are for players to cash in on endorsements, partnerships, and post-playing careers. But Sophie also seems to genuinely like Clark, both as a teammate and as a person. She respects her work ethic, her competitive drive, and her ability to carry herself under immense pressure. That combination makes Sophie uniquely willing to go to bat for her, even when it puts her at odds with others in the league. League leadership's tightrope. The WNBA's leadership, led by Commissioner Kathy Engelbert, now faces a tricky balancing act. They have to support Clark without alienating other players who feel overshadowed. But they also can't ignore the clear reality. The league's current growth spurt is fueled, in large part, by one player's presence. The blending and approach won't work here. The NBA didn't try to hide Michael Jordan in the 90s. The NHL didn't downplay Wayne Gretzky. They leaned in, built around them, and made them the centerpiece of their marketing. The WNBA's hesitation to do the same could be its undoing. The path forward. If the WNBA wants to avoid fracturing itself from within, it needs a multi-pronged approach. Protect its stars. Officiating must be consistent and proactive, especially when it comes to unnecessary contact. Market unapologetically. Clark should be front and center in campaigns, broadcasts, and league events. Educate players. Veterans need to understand that Clark's success doesn't diminish theirs. Increases opportunities for everyone. Promote unity. Highlight stories of camaraderie between players across generations, showing the league as a collective force rather than a divided one. What happens if they fail? If the league mishandles this moment, the consequences could be long-lasting. Clark is still young, with a long career ahead of her, and she'll have options. Overseas leagues could offer her more money and a different environment. Competing U.S. leagues could emerge, dangling higher salaries and more control over marketing. Losing her would be more than a talent drain. It would be a credibility hit. It would signal to the sports world that the WNBA can't handle the pressures that come with sudden mainstream attention. Sophie Cunningham's defense of Caitlin Clark might seem, on the surface, like a teammate sticking up for a friend. But in reality, it's much bigger than that. It's a public warning flare, one that says, if you don't protect the person carrying this league right now, you might not get another chance. And in professional sports, those chances don't come often. When they do, you either seize them or watch them walk away. What Sophie Cunningham has essentially done is rip the polite curtain off the WNBA's biggest internal conflict, the clash between tradition and transformation. And Caitlin Clark sits squarely in the middle of that collision. For years, the league has been slowly building a foundation of die-hard fans, committed franchises, and top-tier athletic talent. It's been steady, deliberate growth. Then Clark arrived like a lightning bolt, igniting the kind of mass-market attention the league had been chasing for decades. That's not evolution. That's revolution. And revolutions rarely make everyone comfortable. From rising star to the center of the storm, before Clark even stepped onto a WNBA court, the attention was staggering. College numbers that shattered records. Games that sold out arenas normally half full for women's basketball. TV ratings that rivaled men's postseason matchups. She wasn't just bringing in new fans. She was changing who those fans were. More young people, more casual viewers, more families, more crossover fans from other sports. But when you walk into a league with that kind of following, you're walking into a locker room where veterans have been grinding for years without that spotlight. For some, Clark's arrival was a breath of fresh air. For others, it felt like a takeover they hadn't signed off on. The unspoken divide. Sophie's public defense of Clark didn't come out of nowhere. There's been tension brewing since Clark's first few games. Moments where she was clearly targeted with extra physicality, hard fouls, and even verbal jabs from opponents who made no secret about wanting to test her. Some of that is normal rookie treatment. Every league has it. But the volume and consistency of it with Clark goes beyond that line. Sophie knows it. Lexi Hull knows it. The fans watching know it. The only people who seem reluctant to admit it are the ones in power, and a few veterans who are enjoying watching the new face of the league take her lumps. How Sophie's comments landed in the league. Inside the WNBA's walls, Sophie Cunningham is respected, but she's also known for speaking her mind without running it through a PR filter. So when she called out the toxic atmosphere and double standards Clark has faced, it made waves. For some teammates and younger players across the league, it was a moment of relief. Finally, someone was saying what they'd been thinking. For others, it was irritating, the kind of public airing they believe should be handled behind closed doors. But Sophie's point wasn't just about protecting Clark. It was about protecting the league from itself. If the WNBA continues to allow its most marketable player to be repeatedly battered, mocked, and marginalized on the guise of earning her stripes, it risks alienating the very audience it just won over. The league's mixed messaging. Here's where things get messy. On one hand, the WNBA's marketing machine has gone all in on Clark. She's in national commercials. Her games are getting prime time slots. She's a headline attraction for road trips. On the other hand, when it comes to officiating, scheduling, and even commentary from league veterans, Clark is treated like just another rookie, or in some cases, worse. That split between the public face and the in-game reality is exactly what Sophie is railing against. Because you can't tell the world she's the future of the league and then shrug when she's flattened by a blindside screen with no foul called. That's not just inconsistent. It's bad business. The business side nobody talks about. Clark's rise isn't just a basketball story. It's an economic one. She's directly responsible for ticket sellouts, merchandise sellouts, and a huge jump in broadcast viewership. Sponsors who previously weren't investing in women's basketball are now writing checks. In other leagues, a player with that kind of impact will be treated like an irreplaceable asset. Protective officiating? Absolutely. Special training staff? Without question. Public backing from league leadership? Every week. In the WNBA, there's been an odd reluctance to go that far. Maybe it's fear of favoritism backlash. Maybe it's leadership trying to prove they're bigger than one player. But in reality, the league's current growth is tied to one player. Sophie knows it, the fans know it, and even the critics know it. Pretending otherwise is just self-sabotage. If the WNBA gets that right, this era could be remembered as the moment the league finally broke into the mainstream for good. If they get it wrong, it could be remembered as the moment they had everything and let it walk away